of this tape will primarily deal with the PM inspection of a C900 Ford tractor, as it's representative of the bulk of the P&D fleet and affords a good model from which to expand your PM knowledge. We'll cover the major inspection points listed on an M102 PM inspection checklist. A vendor is required to make the same checks and subsequently service or adjust components if needed. All vehicle lights must be operable, headlights, cab marker lights, and hazard flashers. Side door reflectors must be present, secure, and unbroken. Directional signals must operate in both the right and the left turn position. Likewise, the dash and interior cab lights should illuminate. This includes the interior directional signals. The DOT requires rear cab reflectors that are both visible and unbroken. Remember, a deadline vehicle is one that will lose money rather than earn it. At the rear, lights must operate in all settings. Brake lights, both left and right directional signals, and of course hazard flashers. Broken or damaged lights are easy to spot, but what if they are physically intact, a bulb has been changed, and they still don't operate? Do you let the vendor pull major surgery? Check out the obvious. If your TV set didn't work, you wouldn't immediately have the picture tube replaced. You'd probably see if it was plugged in. Likewise, a malfunctioning light or fuel pump or whatever may have been caused by a burned out fuse. And a penny or gum wrapper repair is only going to lead to more problems and expense. Have the fuse replaced. Missing or inoperable safety items can also lead to a deadline unit, or even worse, a serious accident. A chock block must be present. A fire extinguisher must be securely mounted inside the cab, and it must be properly charged to be of any use when needed. The needle in the white zone indicates a full charge. Unacceptable, red left, undercharge. Red right, overcharge. Missing or incorrect paperwork can also tie up a unit in its freight. The vehicle registration, M11 book, and locally required documents must be in the pouch. Emergency warning devices. There must be 3 securely enclosed and mounted warning devices in the cab. Their absence could mean a fine, or worse yet, an accident or even legal liability. Don't get stung on something as obvious as a defective horn. Windshield wipers should be inspected for proper operation in both the high and low settings, along with windshield washer operation. A driver's vision can be obscured by worn or defective wiper blades, or malfunctioning or improperly adjusted wiper arms. The washer should wash the front windshield during travel, not the trailer's nose. And if there's to be an adequate supply of water, the washer reservoir cannot leak. With the ignition on, inspect pump operation of both fuel tanks. Left tank, depress prime switch, sounds okay. Change over, okay. It's hard to complete pedal runs on one tank of fuel. Start the engine, apply the brakes, inspect all gauges for proper operation. Amps and temperature should read within the normal range. Holding on the brakes now. Inspecting gauges, oil pressure. Must read 15 to 25 pounds at idle and 45 to 60 at full RPM. If gauges indicate otherwise, you could be heading for some real problems and expense. Warning buzzer, you're below 60 pounds pressure in your brake system. The heater and defroster should be inspected. Check the heater in both the high and low settings. Same for defroster operation. Operate the fresh air vents. You should be able to hear and feel them opening and closing. Defects in any of these comfort controls can make for rather cranky and inefficient drivers. Feel for air and heat flow at both the heater and defroster vents. Steering free play must be inspected with the front wheels turned straight ahead. Pick a point on the wheel, and drag should be experienced within 3 inches from that point as the wheel is turned. Check for clutch free play and chatter. The pedal should travel 1/2 inch and then meet resistance. There should be 1/4 to 3/8 inch play at the clutch cylinder. That's located around back at the rear of the engine, right near the transmission. Here it is. Clutch cylinder. 1/4 to 3/8 inch play. Why? Well, this cylinder activates a fork, and the fork is what engages and disengages the clutch itself. The clutch transfers power from the engine to the transmission by friction, and is too frequently abused and a very costly repair item. Here's a cutaway of the actual thing. The replacement and installation of any of these components is costly. The flywheel, the clutch disc, the center ring, another clutch disc, the pressure plate. One more time. Flywheel, clutch disc, center ring, clutch disc, pressure plate. They operate as a unit through friction and must be properly adjusted. The throwout bearing, another costly item, slides between the clutch and the transmission by means of the fork. Depress the clutch pedal and the throwout bearing comes in contact with the pressure plate fingers. Release the pedal and the throwout bearing is released. Clutch cylinder misadjustment or driver misuse results in continuous contact between the throwout bearing and clutch fingers, equaling excessive friction, burnt bearings or fingers, clutch failure, breakdown, unmoved freight, and lost revenue. Air pressure must build up to 120 pounds within 5 minutes. The compressor must kick out at 120 pounds. Right about there. Federal regulations state that you cannot lose more than 3 pounds pressure in 1 minute with the engine off. The parking brake must function. Apply the parking brake with the engine running, let out the clutch, stall. Brakes held. Tractor protection valve in, brake pressure fan down, and the valve pops out. The trailer protection system is operative in the advent of brake failure. All mirrors and their mounting should be intact, tight and secure. Cab glass, especially the windshield, should be unbroken and without major faults. Missing door handles and window cranks can become a source of driver irritation and complaints. Has the vendor inspected the hard-to-reach items? The master clutch cylinder under the dash. Fluid should coat 1 digit. The condition of tractor to trailer air hoses is critically important. Each and every line, connection, and fitting must be tight and secure. Hoses must also be free of chafing or breaks. A defect or damage anywhere can result in brake malfunction or worse, brake failure. Newer C900s are equipped with coiled plastic hoses. Any sort of kink or hole is strictly prohibited. No repairs, only hose replacement. Glad hand grommets must not be torn, cracked, worn, or in any way bunged up if they are to ensure a leak-proof tractor-to-trailer connection. Electrical lines must be securely connected and be free of breaks or worn insulation. Minor fraying may be reinsulated with electrician's tape. A very sharp eye is required for spotting defects in the air and electrical lines of older units. The revenue rides on the fifth wheel must be kept thoroughly lubed and must not be allowed to dry out, cake, and become rusted. The fifth wheel can be lubricated with the trailer attached through these fittings. If they're missing, you can't lube the fifth wheel. Grease should be thoroughly applied over the entire surface. Thus, when the trailer is attached, it results in an evenly coated surface with reserve lube in these channels. A loose or broken fifth wheel mounting can result in a loose or broken trailer. Mounting bolts must be tight and secure and without visible rust, a sure sign of loose bolts. The cast iron mounting must not indicate any signs of cracks or failure. And the ground strap should be securely attached, unbroken, and fully insulated. Fuel tanks. Late model C900, but beware of the early model C900s, the round tanks which loosen and rotate in their mountings. Tank seams are a likely area for leaks to appear. Areas such as the nameplate can trap moisture, encourage rusting, leaks, or contaminate fuel. Shake the tank to check for looseness. It can develop from broken or defective mounting straps or broken, loose, or missing bolts. Electrical connections to and from the tank must be tight and secure. Wiring should be fully insulated. Bare wires can cause shorts and malfunctions. A dead fuel pump can tie up a unit and its freight. Moving to the engine compartment, defects and leaks are difficult for anyone to spot when smothered in dirt and grime. They're much easier to see when the engine has been cold or steam cleaned. Freight can't be moved without a tractor, and a tractor isn't going anywhere without a functional battery. They must be securely mounted by the hold-down bolts and evidence no leaks or cracks in the case. Fluid levels must be up to the sight lines, and all caps should be secure and replaced if missing. Terminals should be protected against corrosion and subsequent malfunctions with a protective coating. And the vendor should also check the battery's specific gravity with the hydrometer. No power on Monday morning, and everything checks out? Hit the 70 amp circuit breaker button at the front of the battery. It may just turn the trick. Battery cables must be secure and unbroken in order to transmit sufficient starting power. The connections at the starter solenoid must also be in good condition. The radiator must be securely mounted and leak-free if it's going to efficiently cool the engine. Common areas where leaks occur are at or along metal seams, joints, connections, along the upper seams, the lower seams. Holes in the core will usually show obvious leakage. The radiator cap must be tight, gasket intact, and securely attached to the filler neck in order to maintain cooling system pressure. The coolant level should indicate full and may be checked with either a hot or cold engine at the appropriate sight line. All hoses should be thoroughly checked for signs of leaks or defects. These heater hoses evidence chafing from rubbing the cab brace and may very likely leak in the future. Hoses should be inspected for defects and signs of potential failure. Swollen hoses will eventually burst. Check over new hose replacements. White water seepage marks indicate a poorly tightened hose clamp. Shake the alternator to ensure it's tightly mounted. Wiring connection should be tight and intact. 1/2 inch deflection indicates a tight drive belt. Check over air filter replacements. You should be able to see the light from a flashlight held with inside the filter. No light, new filter needed. Shake the air compressor to ensure it's securely mounted. A failure at the compressor equals an air failure everywhere. The drive belt should be in good condition and show 1/2 inch deflection tightness. Check all air lines leading to and from the compressor. They should be leak-free. Follow up on oil and fuel filter replacements to see that they are without leaks and all connections are tight and secure. Which brings up the subject of lubrication. There are dozens of lube points on a tractor. How do you know if you're getting what you're paying for? Well, you could meticulously cross-check this lube chart, or you could spot-check difficult access areas, such as the steering U-joints, located well up under the cab front. Grease on a fitting means nothing. But lubrication that oozes out between joints and connections indicates greased lube points. Suspension. Defects here can result in freight damage or accidents. Inspect for broken springs, U-bolts, and shocks. Shake shock absorbers for tight and secure mounting. The same at the rear. Secure mountings, spring pins present, shackles, U-bolts, and spring leaves present and intact. Shake and rotate the drive line to ensure that the U-joints are tight and secure. Brakes, starting at the rear. Air chambers must be tight, secure, and unbroken to activate the brakes. Let's take a closer look at what happens during brake application in order to see why all components must be in top shape. Friction caused by the brake linings contacting the drum stops the vehicle. Tension between the brake shoes is provided by a spring. A cam spreads both shoes apart to make lining contact with the brake drum. It is attached to a rod which runs to the slack adjuster and in turn connects to the air chamber. Turning the slack adjuster nut counterclockwise decreases brake chamber throw. Clockwise increases chamber throw, equaling greater shoe expansion, equaling increased brake lining contact to drum. Maladjustment, faults, defects, or one missing component equals faulty brakes or system failure. The same checks are true up front. Visually and manually inspect for the presence, condition, and operation of all brake components. Feel for chafing and defects in the brake lines. Exhaust. Manifolds must be secure, no missing bolts, cracks, or leaks. The The same goes for the exhaust pipe and muffler. Shake it to inspect for secure mounting in tight brackets. Feel for exhaust leaks or blow-by at the connections. Look for telltale signs of soot. Tire inspection. They should be inflated to 85 pounds pressure per square inch. Front tread depth should be no less than 4/32 of an inch. And rear depth should not be less than 2/32 of an inch. Inspect for defects and wear. No tread, no good. Tire no good. No sidewall, no good. Tire no good. Foreign object, no good. A chunk missing, tire no good. Just plain no good. Wheels. No breaks, cracks, missing lugs, or loose rims. Valve stems, no cuts or breaks, and the valve caps should be present. Same checks at the front wheel. Tight lugs equal rust-free areas around the lugs. Check the hub fill level. This is an easy vendor follow-up. A dry finger equals a short-changed PM. Fluid around hub centers indicates defects, leaky hubcap gaskets, or sight glasses. This is true both front and rear. Shake air tanks for security and inspect for breaks in the brackets. They can result from vibration. These breaks can be spliced by welding a piece over the defect. The air tanks themselves must have the moisture condensation drained in order to prevent cold weather freeze-up of the system. Moisture and not oil should blow out when the petcock is open. Oil indicates a defect. Well, that about covers the highlights of a C900 PM inspection. There's more to it than a lube job and oil change. So we've talked about P&D preventive maintenance in the terms of the why, the how, and the what. And no, you're still not a maintenance expert, but you now have an idea of the value, reasons, and sources of many PM policies and procedures, which should lead to more questions on how to prevent equipment failure, unmoved freight, and lost revenue.